Welcome, welcome, welcome to the AT Awareness Day AT Town Hall. If you've never been to a town hall before that we've hosted, basically we just chat. It should just be called, not even called town hall, it should be called just chat because that's what we're going to do. We're just going to chat. There is no real plan, there is no agenda. Well, no obvious agenda. All of us, I'm sure, have an agenda. I mean, I have an agenda. I'm just going to keep it to myself. Sarah, you get it.
Yes, I do.
You get it. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I am good, thanks. I was just just bringing people into the world if they have never joined us for a town hall before, what to expect. Um, and I think what you just got is what you could expect is just random talking and just having a conversation. I think that if you don't know the history of the town hall, we started these during COVID times as a way to keep communicating with each other and kind of work through some of the issues that came up with us trying to provide AT service during this kind of remote time. And then the AT town hall just kind of morphed into a weekly chat about anything and everything that people wanted to talk about. So we thought we'd bring it back for today, for AT Awareness Day. If you're not aware, now you are aware, so that I did my job. You have been aware of AT now, and it is AT Awareness Day through the Assistive Technology Act programs. We are celebrating this day as the day we should get the word out about assistive technology. We've been doing a bunch of stuff throughout the month at our center to kind of post to kind of get the word out a little. Jesse and I were just talking. That's Jesse, by the way, the other person on her camera right there. Jesse is in our department. No, she's our newest team member. We hosted a webinar earlier this morning where users of assistive technology shared their story, and it was pretty great. We were just talking about that before everybody else popped on, how great that was. Just great information. The video is processing right now on YouTube, so as soon as it's done, I'll drop the link in the chat so everybody has it because it was really good. But the beauty of AT Town Hall, I don't have to talk the whole time. I prefer to never talk. I'd prefer everybody else talk. So you came to something like this. What would you like to talk about? Do you have something you'd like to share with the group? Assistive technology, a question, a success. I have questions. Here they are. These are the questions from our thing this morning. I could share those. I just don't want to. But we just let everybody talk. Scott, how are you?
Good, Mike. How are you?
I am
Can
good,
you?
thanks. Good to see you.
Yes. So I'll start off. I have a student who's blind in fall that is going to take statistics here, and they do not know like math braille.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if anybody has any experience with like, so she'll have an online textbook, and I'm not really sure that online textbook is going to work through like a screen reader because it's
Yeah.
been my experience that math has not been really well done in the background.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm just asking for anybody if they have any ideas how to support this person. I've already reached out to I believe there'll be like a third party like math program or something. It might be Alex or something like that. I've already reached out to them and asked if they had any kind of recommendations, if they could recommend a screen reader, or if in fact their math text will work
Yeah.
with a screen reader. And I got a quick response that we've heard that JAWS may work. That
Not
was the
exactly a
response.
ringing endorsement, right, Scott?
No,
We've
no, not.
heard that it might work. Like,
We've
yeah,
heard that Jaws might not work, might work.
that's not right.
Um, what is the likelihood that that online textbook is OCR'd correctly for math?
I'm swallowing down my cynicism right now, Scott. I'm swallowing it down. I don't know. I mean, I think it's a really good question. I think that the answer you got from them certainly does not instill a lot of confidence in me that it's going to be. It feels
Doesn't
like that's like the first time they've ever tried to attack that question. Um, have you looked to see if the textbook that your individual is going to be using is available through Learning Ally? where there might be an audio version of it where someone's going through it as, a human reader.
That's a great recommendation. I don't have access to Learning on Ally because of the cost.
Yeah. I wonder if
But
I don't know the answer to this. Maybe someone else does. Can you still browse the Learning Ally catalog without being a member?
oh, I'm pretty sure I can.
I feel like you
I think you
could.
can. So
Yeah.
I could answer. Yeah, I could quickly answer that question. You're right.
Yeah.
All right.
That might be a starting point, Scott. See if it's there. One of the things I always loved about learning ally books, especially things like math or something like that, because it is an individual reading it, chances are higher it's going to be read correctly.
Mhm.
I always think one of the interesting things about Learning Ally too, since Learning Ally is here in New Jersey, we get a chance every once in a while to pop in and actually see how they do things. One of the things they always promoted, and I don't hear them say this much anymore, but I feel like they must still do this, is when it's a textbook on a certain subject, they work really hard to pair that with a volunteer who has knowledge of that subject so that the reading is more natural and they're sharing the right kinds of information,
That makes perfect sense
right? Instead of just text to
because,
speech where it's just plowing through it and hoping for the best.
yeah, we just recently had a question about text to speech and poetry. And yeah, I did a little research on it, but so it turns out that if you put a paragraph at the end of each line, even though it doesn't look right, it'll be double spaced instead of single spaced. It will pause.
Yeah, it because now you're manipulating the digital text to give you the pauses and kind of the flow that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's a good strategy to get around that. Yeah, and you're right. The looking at it at that point is a little off, but to hear it, it sounds so much better.
And it was done correctly in our OER, our in-house OER.
Look at this.
Yay.
Here's our positive moment of the day. There it was. Sky, see what happened? I love it every once in a while. Things work out. Anybody else? Other ideas for Scott? Like the places we could try, um, things we could ask the publisher to get a little bit more of an answer from them.
Well, I did tell them it was coming in the fall, so they had plenty of time to prepare.
I'm sure they've brought a team together, Scott, to work on that right now. So there's a team in jumping into action. Oh man. Oh, my negativity should not happen on AT Awareness Day. I should be much more aware and much
No.
more. But I think that's our struggle with publishers, right? Is that
Oh, it's been endless, and the ending of the, like, ATN has come back, but it has not really come back. There's only like 10 publishers that
okay?
participate
Yeah.
now. But I did get lucky. They do have, I believe, Cengage or McGraw-Hill, so that at least I was able to get that from there
Okay. Yeah. So at least you're getting
pretty
something,
quickly.
right? Yeah.
Yes.
Someone just dropped in the chat, Scott. Sabina just dropped in the chat a link to from the Perkins School for the Blind, how to read math expressions with a screen reader.
Oh, great.
A nice
Take a
resource.
look at
Thank you,
that.
Sabina. Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome. Love it. That's
I
it.
was just thinking that maybe you could go to like chat boards of local school districts or something similar and ask what resources
I
people might.
do have access to QIAT, the
Mhm.
quality indicators for assistive
Yeah.
technology. That would probably be a great place to ask that as well.
It shouldn't hurt. It won't hurt. That's for sure, Scott. Throw it out there and see. Maybe someone has had an experience with that. Yeah.
Thank
Maybe
you.
you might get lucky and it might even be the book that you're looking for, not just kind of a generic kind of here's how I do it. But maybe you might luck into somebody using that book.
I've also gotten great help in the past. I had some questions about brailing, and I turned to our local commission for the blind and visually impaired,
Mhm.
and I talked to the director of education, and got she was amazing. So I do have a source there as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. It wouldn't hurt to touch base with them too and see if they've had experience. Maybe they have access to Learning Ally, and they could try that.
Well, we'll see. Well,
You know,
I'll I'll do research after this meeting, of course.
Lots of paths to take. Scott, I feel like we gave you better answers than the publisher did, to tell you the truth.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. I appreciate it. Anybody else? What else? What else is happening with anybody?
Hi, Michael.
Hello, Robert. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm
Long
hanging in
time
there.
no see.
Yeah. How's everything? All right?
Yes, I'm hanging in there. Pretty soon I'll be out of work for a while because I'll be having a procedure done. It has to be done.
Okay. Well, good luck.
So yes, I'm using assistive technology a lot too. And I
Awesome.
noticed,
Give us a taste, Robert. What kind of tech?
hold on, I'm getting ready to pull it up now.
Oh, all right.
I've been using see, sometimes when I read textbooks like PDF, it's hard for me to comprehend it. So that's why I use apps like Bookshelf and Easy Reader. So I'm going to put them in the chat. What the names
Awesome.
are? There's Dolphin Easy Reader, and there's Bookshelf by Vital Source.
Awesome. I love it. Those are great examples. A Dolphin Easy Reader, one of my personal favorites to share with people because it's really flexible, and
Hmm.
the basic functions of it are free. Um, I've noticed now going into it that there is
Yeah, there's a charge
all of a
if you
sudden,
want to
yeah,
read PDFs.
yeah,
If you want to read PDFs, you have to pay $49.99 a year.
yes, yeah. That was discouraging when I went in there and saw that because that Easy Reader tended to be my go-to because it was so flexible what people put into it to have read. And it also worked on every platform.
Hmm.
And the beauty of it is it's one of the things I love about tools when I look at them. It looked the same on every platform. So that if I was training somebody to use it or we were working through it, it didn't matter what they were looking at. It always looked the same. I always found that to be really helpful. Sometimes the frustration of a tool on a different platform. It looks one way on my iPhone. It looks a different way on an Android tablet. It's just set up differently, and that's sometimes difficult to be able to
Well, well,
support
actually,
people.
well, actually, I like it better on the tablet because the screen is bigger and you
Yeah,
can see the lettering.
I agree. I agree for sure. Yeah, it has been a really great, and that's one of the few tools that actually has kind of a Windows app also. It'll run right on your desktop, which is nice.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. There we go. There's
Yeah,
a free promotion for Easy Reader.
and plus you can also read on Easy Reader. You can also read your books on it also.
Yeah. Yeah.
If
I
you
feel like
connect
that,
your Bookshare account to it, you can also read your books on Bookshare through that also.
right. And it's so easy, right, Robert? I mean, it's right there and you're
Yeah.
already logged in.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, another thing too, when you have all your books on tech, it's easier for you to manage because all your books are on the device, no bookshelves, no books, and that's why I'm getting to the point now. I'm tired of buying books. I'm trying to read the PDFs. I'll just put them on my device and have them read to me.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great way to use it. You know what I
So I'm
found,
put,
and
so I'm putting.
I debate sharing this on the group because I'm recording this meeting right now, but I'm gonna anyway. And if this feature goes away, I apologize because of this. But I'm trying not to pay for it. Anybody who knows me for a long time knows I'm going to work really hard not to pay for something. I'm going to figure it out, use the free as long as I can. Um, you're not able to open an EPUB file when you're in the app. So if I open the app and I go to try to
Uh-huh.
open a file, that's one of the pay features. But what I found out is if that EPUB lives in like your Google Drive, so say
Uh-huh.
that you move that file to your Google Drive, if you open it in your Google Drive on your iPad or something, and you say open in, Easy Reader shows up and it will let you put that file in there. So
Like
instead
even
of
if
opening the app first to open the file and get it, go to Drive and say, great, here's the file. Please open it in this app. You know how you say open in and it gives you the whole list. If you choose Easy Reader, it will drop it there without you having the paid version.
but you can also if you have the Vital Source app, you can easily download the ebook to that app also,
Yeah.
and then you can have the full ebook and you can have it But the only difference is with that, you can't highlight or anything or say there's catches.
Yeah, exactly. And that becomes the trick, is that, the bonus, or, the kind of the best part about Easy Reader is the kind of depth of features that it has. And
Hmm.
so trying to get things in there becomes really important. I've also still used the clipboard function too, which is still part of the free version, where if I open up that document somewhere else, just highlight the text and clipboard it in, and it will drop that in to my files there. So couple workarounds for Dolphin Easy Reader, but yeah, one of my favorites. I always use that as kind of my go-to, because I love Voice Dream Reader, but then that went to a subscription based. And then so I went to Easy Reader, and now that has started to have a fee, which kind of stinks. There you go. What else is happening? Anybody else? Anything to share? Want a question to kick us off? How do you get the word out to, I'm going to change my question. How do you get the word out to the public to explain why AT is so important to individuals? How do you spread the word? As you're thinking about that, Janet puts in the chat, really good point. Subscription-based apps are really hard still for schools to deal with. And when these apps move to a subscription, that becomes, for some schools, that becomes the impossible barrier they just can't seem to cross, which is frustrating, to say the least. So, how do you get the word out about assistive technology? You personally, what do you do? How do you spread the word? How do you raise awareness?
Mike, do you want me to start you off?
Sure, go ahead. And then I'll go to Ken's question, which is good. Ken supplanted my question with a good question in the chat. Go ahead, start me off, and then we'll move to Ken's.
I was just going to say that I often point out the errors that assistive technology makes while I'm using said assistive technology, and actively say, while I'm participating with you, I'm using X assistive technology, and it brings it into the fold. It brings it into the conversation.
Yeah, highlight it as a part of the supports that you use, and I think that's great. I love that idea. I think that's really good. If people want to answer that question, you can. Ken's question in the chat, which is an awesome question: is there a concern about Medicaid funding? Ken, where do we start?
Is that the real reason behind this question? Because I would think that, like many things in life, the only people you really need to get the word out to are the people who will benefit or need this support. It seems like getting things out generally to the public is a different question altogether, and maybe spurred by current events.
Yeah, I think it's a two-parter. I think it's always nice, Ken, to get a sense from people of what are the avenues you're using to spread the word about the power of these tools, right? I think that can be a universal question. I think our current state of affairs certainly colors that question for sure.
I mean, I can also see the value of the public just being more aware of AT, so that they're not so surprised by its use in public. But yeah.
I think you're right, Ken. I think that there's this, if we go from the slant of current landscape of where we are, I'll say politically without being political. How about that? Where we are right now. There has been a large push from sectors of our field to celebrate successes and to promote them. I've said on that, probably in this town hall multiple times, that one of the things that I always wonder if we don't, as AT professionals, do a great job of is trumpeting our successes. I think we get to a point of success with an individual, with a piece of technology, with an implementation, whatever it might be. We get to a point of success, and then what do? We switch gears and move to the next thing that needs to be resolved, and we move on. And so, there's rarely time to be like, hey, did you see that really cool thing we did over there and how it worked and what that person's now able to do? There has been a fairly substantial push to take a step back and say, no, we have to show the things we are doing. I don't think it's any coincidence that National Assistive Technology Awareness Day is driven by the AT Act programs and our national organization to get the word out about the changes we are helping to facilitate in our communities. It's obvious I'd have to be really clueless. I am clueless at times, but really clueless to say that that's not part of the goal with this, is to get that information out there and to have people be aware. When we look at some of these, was it last week that there was the DHS leak of a proposed budget? It was either last week or the week before. I don't know. It all starts to blur together. And then all disability organizations spent a bunch of time digging through this. It was a 64-page document that got leaked online, and it was the entire Department of Human Services budget proposal for the next year. And disability organizations spent their time combing through line by line to see where the programs were, on what side of the funding bubble there. Many were on the part to be cut. Some were on the part that were still going to be funded. But we all know that's just the first step of that, right? That's not written in stone yet. It's written in sand at this point, right? It's just we're seeing where ideas are starting to formulate. And there's some concern. I mean, if you looked at that or you see any of the news, there are large swaths of services for adults with disabilities that are on the block to be cut in this next go round of funding, and that's concerning, obviously. That's very real where we are. So yeah, Ken, a very long-winded way to say, yeah, there's probably something behind this. And I think there always has to be.
I think, Mike, you bring up a lot of really good points, and some of that I see it's reflected in Janet's comment in the chat too, about how we do all use technology every day and it makes our lives easier, but for some people it makes things possible. And I think unless you live in this space and you know that, there are so many people when they see, hey, funding is going to potentially be cut, they don't understand how many people's lives will be impacted by that funding cut because they don't live in this space.
Right.
And so that's something, like, for me personally, that I've been talking a lot to individuals about, is just how many people use assistive technology, what assistive technology is. I have parents who are aging and they're like, but we're not disabled. And I said, you're not disabled yet.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that at some point you won't need assistive technology or services that are looking at being cut. And so one of the things that I found is sharing the success stories with people, having AT users be the person who's speaking versus myself about a tool or how that tool has impacted their lives.
I agree. I think that there's a point where the things I would say in a 45-minute webinar can be more succinctly shared by a 2-minute clip of somebody demonstrating their success and just talking about it. One of the things I said to Jesse after our webinar this morning was there were very powerful moments of we had 3 assistive technology users on our panel having conversations about why they're using certain things, how it's helping them, and those kinds of things, just letting them tell their story. And there were moments where out of nowhere, like, something super powerful came out, and it like made you stop and you're like, wow, yeah, okay, I get that. And that's really, I mean, it struck you. One of our panel members made himself cry talking about it, which was amazing. I mean, and then he told us to talk amongst ourselves for a second while he composed himself, which was hysterical. But it really just kind of the way that these tools have made changes in their lives, the individuals that we heard from this morning, was awesome. And
So Mike, was
the
original question about getting the word out to the general public?
I didn't even give you a definition, Ken, of where we wanted that word out. I let you decide.
Oh, okay. Just
you
get the
took
word
it one
out.
way, which I
Okay.
appreciate. I
All
think
right.
that's great. And I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at that question, right? Ken, this idea of who is it we're even talking about?
Because if it's the general public, I haven't heard a story yet that addresses the awareness of the general public.
Yeah, I think, I think you're right. I think that it's really interesting. I think,
Can I make a point to that if I may, though?
please, yeah, go ahead.
Because it's not that everyone always, obviously standing out is fine, and plenty of people like to stand out, but there are also a great deal of people who prefer to blend in, and assistive technology affords them that opportunity in some ways where they might not otherwise have it. So there could be general public AT users that are simply not wanting to draw too much attention to themselves, but are in fact still benefiting from
Right.
all of these things. Which I think is important, especially in today's culture and climate that's going all over the place. It's not necessarily the time that many people feel comfortable coming out, if you will, and making themselves more known, given some of the climate issues that are currently happening. So
I think that's a good point.
So
And
I'm thinking more in terms of if you want to get the news out to the general public for any topic, how would you do it? I mean, we're talking what medium would you use? What media would you use? I'm sure you could find someone who would be willing to be the spokesperson. But I think, and again, I'm making assumptions based on an assumption I made earlier, which is this is based on concerns about funding for Medicaid in this political climate, and a belief that if the public doesn't know about what Medicaid is doing in this area, then they'll just let it happen. But again, I'm thinking, yeah, you need to get something out like public service announcement on television, the right channels, the right news services, or you have, I don't know, maybe at a news for the local news, something. It just has to be something you can get in the face of the public, which is a challenge for anything.
yeah, it is. I agree with you, Ken. That's a challenge, right? In general, think about the media landscape of how many channels. I'm going to make channels is a bigger word there, channels, but social media, TV, radio, whatever it is, channels there are, and how do you approach that and share that information beyond what you might see, which is kind of I mean, sometimes we see these stories, not always, but I'm going to just say sometimes we see these kind of feel good stories like, look at this is great. But yeah, I'm talking more about what Ken's saying is that this was great and it's directly connected to this other thing. And are you aware that if this other thing disappears, that's going to be harder to do? And it could be Medicaid, it could be AT funding for school age children. What if the federal Department of Ed goes away? What happens to all of that? And how does that shift itself to the states? Now I know that's not going to happen overnight, but these are the kinds of things that we see popping up. And how is that going to impact as we go forward? So I think there's unfortunately a lot of moving parts here. And then, like I mentioned before, beyond that, this idea of services to adults with disabilities. I mean, we have individuals like in our state in New Jersey, and every state has it. A developmental disabilities council is what we have in the state here. Their funding's about to be cut, and they won't exist. They've existed for 35, 40 years, and they'll just cease to exist because their money's going away. And this is not, we're not talking about hundreds of millions of dollars to keep these programs running. But those are the kinds of programs that are on the chopping block when you see these proposed budgets. And that's troubling.
Mm-hmm.
Such a bummer. I'm such a bummer. Sorry. What else does somebody want to talk about? Sarah, talk about something nice.
Nothing like throwing me on the chopping block there, Mike.
Your camera was up, and Scott threw out his first, and Jesse had her camera off for a second. You won.
I won. So what I'm working on right now is we just did a webinar for parents around how to support communication at home.
Awesome.
And it spurred really great conversation from a lot of families, and they've actually asked us to record it. And so now what you caught me working on this morning is figuring out a way to make it accessible for families. I think that's part of what we're talking about here too, is how do we make these stories accessible so that people see the human side of it, even if they maybe don't know an AAC user or an AT user. But yeah, so I'm working on what we call quick wins here in Michigan. So if you don't know me and this is your first time meeting me, I'm Sarah Percolosi. I'm an AT AAC specialist with AltShift. For now, we are a Michigan Department of Education grant-funded initiative through the Office of Special Education. And so we develop, they're called quick wins, so something that's pretty easy to kind of take in and understand in a short period of time. So I'm working on developing something for educators and families around how do we really collaborate and meet the needs of students, because our kids don't just exist in silos at school, but how do we build that connection between home and school and support families in supporting their kids?
I think it's great.
Is that nice enough?
That was really nice. Yeah, it was great. And really like practical ways to connect these bigger concepts to individuals. Not make it feel unattainable, and just, sometimes we talk with people, I know I do, and people are thrown off by what they perceive as the depth and complexity of our field of assistive technology. And sometimes it's this idea of making these very humanistic connections, like this is how this is helping, and here's what it is. I think those are great. So are you thinking these quick wins, what are these going to be? Like, are these video based, like on a YouTube? Like, what are you going to do? Like, where are these things going to live? Are they strictly social media?
So we have quick wins already designed. I can drop a link in the chat for different topics. And our quick wins typically have come from the field of people saying, hey, it would be really helpful if you developed this, or what about that? And so they're text and video based for the most part. They're pretty short, and they're, like you said, Mike, how do we make it accessible? And so we're not doing big picture, everything at once, but how do we get people essentially to get started? So to take action and move forward. Oh,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Yeah, definitely throw them in the chat. That would be great. I think that's interesting. I had a meeting last week with a group of teams that I've been supporting all year. We met in September in person. They were new to their role as assistive tech people in their school district. So these were 3-person teams from an array of school districts brought together by kind of a regional consortium. And we met in September. They were all completely overwhelmed by the fact that they had been volunteered into this team scenario. Very few of them offered themselves for this. They were voluntold. They were said, congratulations, you're part of our school AT team now. So we spent the entire year working. So we worked one live day in September. We met virtually once a month for the whole entire year. And then I went back last week to talk with them. And we revisited all of the things we talked about in the first day, and then highlighted how far they had come where they hadn't felt like they had made any change at all. And it was really interesting. And I think that their feeling of not having changed or become better at what they do was a direct result of the kind of hamster wheel approach to just things coming at them constantly. But just listening to them in this last day, they were thoughtfully moving through scenarios and not just jumping to the app store to search for something, but instead asking questions, being kind of evaluative in their discussions with each other, and saying things like, well, we obviously won't just jump into technology and those kinds of things. And I kept pointing out to them, these are your wins as you go through. You might feel like we had no change, or you're still as what you perceive to be ill prepared for this role, but you're not. And so it gave them kind of a moment of wait a second, we've actually changed. We've become more equipped to move forward and answer questions and be more of a leader in our schools. And in fact, we spent the second half of the day with after we finished being happy about how we had really grown in the year and nobody thought we did, we spent the afternoon talking about, okay, well, now what? Now what will you do going forward? What does this look like? And we did some planning for them for next year to set them up for what it looks like when they come back to school in August. And it was a fun day. It was a fun day to watch them have successes, watch them realize their successes, and then share them with each other was excellent. And I think that the ability to work with them over time enabled us to take what might be, Sarah, I love this idea of quick wins. We actually did a section of the day called Quick Wins, is how would they share ideas with educators they work with in a quick win kind of scenario, like, hey, did you ever think of doing this? Or, hey, what about this? And we called them quick wins and gave them kind of some simple ways to bring other people into this process. Their struggle was that their schools sent them to this consortium because they wanted everyone on their teams to be, and I don't even know what this means, but licensed AT evaluators. Great. That sounds impressive. I don't even know what that is, but it sounds impressive. And then we had a lot of conversation throughout the year because there was panic in most of their minds of, I'm not an evaluator. I'm not licensed. What does that even mean? And so we spent a lot of time talking about, don't worry about being an evaluator that's licensed, but do you understand a process enough to move a student along a continuum of success towards a goal, whatever it might be. And so that was where we focused our time. But it was nice to see them move from panicked at every request that came in to now thinking about them, moving them through their process, and coming up with solutions to move their students forward and move their colleagues forward to provide levels of support so they didn't have to do everything. So there's my win from the past week.
So I think one of the things as I'm listening to you, I recently had an opportunity to interview Kim Strobel, and she is an author. She teaches Small Steps to Big Joy, I think is what it's called. But in her book, she talks about how our brains are naturally wired to see kind of the negative more so than the positive. So it takes almost rewiring of our brain over and over again to start recognizing the joy or the wins. But we're really easy at recognizing the things that we're not good at or the things that we're not successful in. And so I love like how you kind of reframed that last day to say, let's step back and look at the progress that we've made over time, because sometimes we get stuck on that hamster wheel and it feels like we're not making progress. And then, of course, the other thing I'm going to point out is that you gave them a process. And I think that is a part of what we all do, or maybe are all called to do, is helping people see, how is there a way forward? How can we have these conversations about what assistive technology is and who might benefit from it in a way that's not very haphazard and chaotic?
Which is right away what happened to this group when they were told, congratulations, you're our AT evaluator, without knowing anything more than that, beyond the fact of, I guess, that some of them didn't run away when they were talking about AT. They were then found to be the people in their school that were going to solve these problems for everybody. And I think your word of haphazard is a really good word, because I think that's how most of the AT requests were coming to them, was haphazard. Like, we should do an evaluation on this, and then this, and then this. And what they found was some of the times the thing someone was asking for, which I'm sure we've all had issues with before, the thing someone was asking wasn't really what they were asking at all. If you went back to that educator and asked more questions and talked to the student and learned a little bit, you found that the need was actually quite different than what the original request was. And so I think that's really Sabina. Hi.
Hi, it's actually I'm not filling in for Zabina. My name's Diane.
Oh, hi, Diane. Okay, hi. You should have just been
Having been
Sabina
somebody-
right now. Who we wouldn't know. That would be awesome.
Having been in one of those positions,
Yeah.
and then having found out that I was the AT coordinator at an IEP meeting.
Sorry. And I laugh in the best possible way at you. Hey, here's our AT coordinator. And you start looking around.
Literally, I did, and I didn't leave it to the third one. And I'm like, am I really?
Are you talking
But
to me?
yeah, I got from one of the team members to suddenly you're the coordinator. But I think part of the problem is administrators know they have to provide this, something has to be done, and they just assign it. And from what I'm finding out from working in multiple districts and now multiple states, is a lot of times the administrators really don't know what that encompasses.
Yeah.
So they just assign it to somebody. And then you are trying to figure this out on top of your job because your boss has no clue about how much time it is, as well as your team. And then being able to make those changes in those ways to your colleagues is spinning wheels, because administration doesn't always think through what's involved and putting these things in places, and working with IT, and it's a haphazard approach that's thrown at. I think right now I'm working in a Tennessee team, and I think one of the ways the state's done it is really nice is when they put things in place is a lot of the focus is at that admin. And a lot of our training and focus is with the administrators, not just the teachers and the aides. We do that, we're coaching them, but so much of it is targeted to the administration. And when we get consult requests from teachers, you need to notify your SPED director. You need to know they're in on, because otherwise it causes a lot of chaos. And I think that's actually where, as a personal feeling, I think a lot of funding is wasted because things are done in inefficient ways and practices. There's a lot of organizations to tell information about things and hook people up, but the process has not been thought out. There's a lot of duplicates. You do this, you do that, and that coordinated. So I think, and then when you go back and you look at fundings and programs and the accomplishments with the amount of money that's being spent, it is not accomplishing always very much, which then is not, so it's not just a matter of getting it out, is getting it out in the words and the success and efficient manners and ways that are actually producing results. And when those results come, you start seeing it in the public notices it. And I said, I'm an AT user. I had, as an AT specialist in one district, had to fight for the AT for my child in another district. And being mom and a therapist in a school district, of course, it was going to his district. I was looked at kind of differently. Oh, you're just, in all these things. So I do see the benefit. I mean, and I used it with my children when I worked with students of, hey, I'm using this too. This really helps. This is what I can do. But I think the biggest thing of, and I'm hoping that some of the budget cuts, instead of programs going away, maybe, or if they do go away and some of the funding, that things will become more efficient instead of just functioning in the same way. Because I said, I've worked in multiple states in multiple positions, and I see so much wasted funds. I see so many things thrown at kids that are, especially with Medicaid kids, and that Medicaid funding, so many tools and devices that are bought and wasted. They're abandoned, just thrown away. So I think things can work if we take a little bit of a change in direction and really start thinking things through, and a targeted plan of, yes, we need to get parents on board and parents advocates, and get them involved. But we also really have to target that administration and those changes and how we function. And then when you get these teams that are thrown into it and said, hey, you're the new AT, you're the new evaluators, they're not so lost and they're not making as many decisions that waste more of that funding just because they don't know what they're doing.
And I think you're right. I think historically, we in the field have struggled at times because there are times where people kind of devalue the process piece because they have the impression that that slows everything down. And so they're
If it's
just
done right, it speeds it up.
exactly. It's the old to go slow to go fast approach things, right? It is. And so it's really tricky at times. I mean, I can think back the minute you were talking, as soon as you were talking, Diane, one of the stories that flashed in my head was a special ed director who said to me, just recommend the tools, don't recommend training because we're not going to pay for the training anyway. And I think back to that. And when you say wasted money, wasted equipment, wasted effort, and we didn't meet the goal because that student was not successful. All of it because someone didn't have an understanding of the process and what was involved in finding success for somebody.
Well, I've worked in some very rural, low income places in states, and I worked in a very rich district in California. I saw we had the funding in California, but I tell you, we got better tools and resorts when I was working in those rural places where we made things work. We valued what we got. It was devalued. Where I saw California waste. So they have so many layers of organizations telling you about organizations and telling you about funding and telling you about organizations. There's about 5 levels before anything's actually done. And that's where, so by the time it gets to the bottom to do something, there's hardly any funding left. So there's not much to do things with. All your billions of dollars are spent of people repeatedly doing the same thing, of just telling you about something else. And a lot of the organizations are just informational, which is important. But when you have 5 informational ones and only 1 actively doing something, there's an imbalance in the funding. And those programs do need to go away. They can be consolidated into 1. And then make 5 actually that do something. But I said, I really saw more effort, more implementation in the districts that had very little, that really wanted to make things work, that were really invested in their students because they're a community that you didn't see as much in the districts that I've worked with more funds.
Yeah. I think there is definitely moments where that has happened for sure. I could think, and it's funny because I guess it does very much depend on kind of the culture of that school, the philosophy of the people kind of driving the service. Because, I think back to other schools, and I think I agree. I've seen large schools do it poorly and small schools do it well. I've seen the flip, and I've seen large schools very effectively provide service. I've seen small schools just flat out not. And so, right, it all comes back to that awareness and that understanding and the ability to ultimately make sure you understand, do you have a process? How many times, I can't even think of how many times, talking to a school about AT consideration and their jump right away to, well, you're talking about an evaluation. And I said, no, that's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about consideration. We may get to evaluation, but we're talking about consideration right now. What does this person need? Let's discuss it and let's figure it out. That is certainly not as flashy as give me a new iPad with the newest apps on it. Give me AI so it'll do everything.
Right, but administrators are looking at things legal, everything. They don't understand the AT, and then what they know is special education assessments and evaluations, and that's what the lawyer knows, that's what the advocate knows, and that's what they think stand in court. So that's what they want, and they don't know how to go to the rest of the process.
Yeah.
And they're afraid that other process won't stand up in court.
I think there's something very true
and
to
that's
that,
the
Diane.
lawyers.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right.
that's
I
the other
think,
thing, is not just the administrators. You need to educate the lawyers
yeah.
about this
Lawyers,
process.
advocates, families, all of the people that are part of our process, part of our team. Because I think you're right. I think that there are times where an evaluation is asked for strictly because the person asking knows that will generate some action. Now, that doesn't mean no action was happening. And in fact, there's been some instances where I've been part of a team where the request for the evaluation was meant to be a trigger to get something to get done. And then the team in the school was surprised because things were moving along. And then what it was a lack of communication between a school team and the home team, I'll call them. So there was a disconnect there that caused them to do something.
But I think still there's a bigger thing of the lawyers and the administration don't understand that difference, because AT is a related service. And so then it has to be along the other lines of the related services. And you have to have an AT specialist to do the work. And they have to go into just like therapy 2 to 3 times a week. They don't understand that difference. And so you're going in without doing that education and just going in and tackling that the therapists need to figure out how to do this. You're just, in a way, having been in that, it's burdening that therapist and that teacher, because you're in the middle now of fighting what you know. I was actually told not to do best practice by the lawyers at the day, because that's what they didn't understand it.
Yeah.
So I was not able to do best practice, which I had an interesting argument with our lawyer was, what do you think is going to happen when we go to court?
Correct.
And
right.
admin says, this is what you need to do. And best practice is brought up as this. And I even fought that as an OT, never mind as an AT. In the specialist. But it said it's really, I think a lot needs to be taught there. And then as you're teaching and we're teaching the teachers, the therapists, how to do this AT team, they're not having the burden of learning all this new stuff and then trying to do a balancing act between what they're now required to do and what is best practice in your field, which is what you're supposed to be following, especially if you have the ATP or an OT license or speech license, and what your admin and the lawyers are saying you have to do, which then just adds more stress and levels of difficulty. So I actually think a lot of times, again, this approach is we're hitting in the middle and trying to go both ways instead of that process.
Yeah, I agree with those things that you said for sure. I think the struggle comes in at times, and maybe someone else has had experiences too. It's hard to get administrators to sit in a training or to be trained, to be part of the discussion. Even if that's kind of put out there as an understood, like this is an expectation that you'll be part of this. It's really difficult.
I'm gonna hop in because we work with ISDs all over the state of Michigan. We have 56 ISDs here in Michigan. And about 2 to 3 years ago, I want to say, we started to experience this, like that bottlenecking that you're explaining, Diane, of now we have a bunch of educators who want and know how to do better, but they're kind of stuck in all of the red tape. And so we changed our approach to how we partner with ISDs. And we started saying, hey, we need your directors in these rooms. And at first there was pushback. And I think there was pushback because we as specialists didn't really know how to clearly articulate why those people needed to be there. We just knew they needed to be. We had some who just took our word for it and they trusted us and they came. And that gave us opportunities to be able to hone in on how can I explain it to a director who's like, I can't sit in a 2-day training about assistive technology. To be able to articulate to them what happens when they're not there versus what happens when they are there. And we've seen in the last year the difference that it's made, because now again, we're developing processes for AT that involve people who are the decision makers, who see the big picture, and they're making those decisions, understanding why they're making that decision. So we're starting to see a shift in the involvement of our administration. We have them work with us to write collective action plans. So looking at, in 3 to 5 years, what will assistive technology consideration look like in our ISD, in our local districts? And then we spend a lot of time talking about the systems of support. So what systems are we developing to support the process? What systems are we developing to support the implementers, the teachers who are going to be going out and doing this? So it's really complex and messy work. But once we raised the bar and we had a few people who were willing to do it, and then to gather that data and the difference it's made, we've seen now, I think we're working with 12 different ISDs, and all of them have directors of special education. Some of them have superintendents that are involved in our work. So it's possible. It's just really challenging to get the first ones there.
Yeah.
That's a Tennessee AT program that was put in place, their project a couple years ago that I came to work for. I really like, because they looked at what all these other teams were doing, and those mistakes, and what was successful, what wasn't. So when this project went into place, we had that knowledge. So I said a lot of our focus has been not just but they're hitting the admin just as hard. And the TDOE is a part of it and coming down. So they're coming down administratively as we're hitting and educating those administrators and below. So it really was nice to see versus that hodgepodge. That was something when I interviewed for this that was a big question I asked for. What's the support on the state level and the administrative level, and what is your approach? Because I didn't want to walk into another firestorm of kind of everything going crazy. So it's been really nicely done. We've had some bumps, but it's going well, I think.
That's awesome, Diane. We all have bumps, but it's good because there's a systematic plan there, right? Like how to approach it, which is great.
It is. And I think it really has the potential to be really successful. We're doing it really well and done without frustrating. I think our whole team loves their job, not just doing the AT, but because it was put in place with the right sequence and process to get going. And yeah, we still made little mistakes, but it wasn't just a hodgepodge, which is what I ran into in some of the other states.
That's awesome. I love it. Love it. All right, everyone, we've come to the top of the hour. Last call for anything you'd like to add to the group before I let you go back and spread the word about AT awareness for the rest of the day and beyond, please. Anything anybody would like to share? We'll drop out of town hall every once in a while. I think these are good just to chat every once in a while. I like the idea of just chatting every once in a while. So we'll look at some schedules.
My email added. Is there a way so I can get that just through Sabina?
Sure. Send it to me in the chat right now, and then I'll let you know when we're going to do them. A lot of times we post this on the Quiet listserv. We'll post it on our own internal New Jersey list that we have, but I know each time we do a town hall, we do put it to the Quiet listserv. So if you're on that, you should be able to see it. We post a lot of our things on there, so definitely check that out. We do a lot of webinars. They're all free. There's no cost for anybody to attend them, so we do a lot of different topics. So please join us. We would love to.
Thank you.
Copy your email, and I will keep you posted. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. It was good seeing you all, and I hope that I see you soon. Take care.
Thanks so much.